you take the roll?
It's me, huh?
Yes.
We can all just say here. Simplify it.
I apologize. Marilyn McCully,
Here.
Steve Pesci,
Here.
Mark Siracusa,
Here.
Harold Whitehouse,
Here.
Erica Wagonic,
Here.
Police Captain Mike Maloney,
Here.
Fire Chief Todd Germain, excuse me.
Here.
That's an old list. Sorry. Peter Rice, Public Works Director,
Here.
City Manager Karen Conrad,
Here.
and Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here.
Why is my face red?
It's the first meeting of the year, so we're going to do the selection of the chair and vice chair.
I move to propose a slate, a chairman being Councilor Bagley, and a vice chair being Steve Pesci.
I would second that.
Any? Yes.
I move that all nominations cease. How's that?
Well, let's just have some discussion first in case
Yeah.
there's any.
Okay.
I think we instituted the vice chair position last year, and I think it was helpful to have backup for meetings that the chair can't make. So I support it.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess we'll take a. Do we need a roll call vote? This one, or can we just do it?
I'll get you right this
I
time.
think we're all in person, and unless someone wanted a roll call vote, I think voice is okay.
It's good.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. So now we're going to. Oh, sorry. Financial report.
Yep. Let me get this up on the screen.
What about the financial report?
There we go.
She's pulling it up.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
So we're pleased to report that with 41% of the year gone by, we're about 53% of our budgeted revenue coming in. So this is our slowest month of the year coming on right now, and I think we'll see it start picking up in March this year, and I think we're going to do a little bit better than budget, which is what we're hoping for, and we're about 10% below on expenses right now, so we're happy with where we're at.
Excellent. Mary Lou?
Yes, at some point, can we get a listing of all of the expenditures that come out of the transfer to parking fund? I think we've done this in the past, just a review of where that money goes through the parking fund. It often comes up when we have a request for a crosswalk or an RFP that the financial end of it comes in, and I think it would be helpful for the community to know where those funds go to. That's 71%.
I think we have that information in the annual budget. However, it might be helpful if we had a presentation for the Parking, Traffic, and Safety Committee, because I believe the funds for, say, a rapid flashing beacon come from CIP allotments to this committee. The funds from parking, which I believe last year resulted in a reduction of taxes for the medium household of
Right.
$318,
Right.
either go into improvements to the downtown parking area, such as plowing, snow removal, trash pickup, things like that, and then some of those funds go to the general fund as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, the $2.4 million goes straight to the general fund. That helps offset taxes. An
Right.
additional 1.8 go to services such as snowplow removal, garbage collection, cleanup of downtown, crossing guards, maintenance of the downtown area. These items are identified in the budget annually, and it is something that Ben is more than versed on being able to rattle off all the types of things that we do. And if the chair and the committee would like, we could do a brief presentation on that, in advance of the budget process.
Harold?
Now, before I make a motion to accept the financial report as presented, can somebody give me a brief report on how we're coming along on the High Hanover Street parking garage? I mean, are we working safely? I just don't want anybody, get hurt like it has in other city. Yeah. Hi, Helen.
So as you know, this is a 3-year project. If you've walked by and looked into the basement floor, you'll see all the temporary supports in place. The garage, there's been 0 injuries associated with the work to date, knock on wood. We have weekly meetings with the contractor to reinforce that. We have an independent structural engineer that comes to those meetings and reviews the progress. And there have been, to my knowledge, no public complaints relative to the work. So it's not going as quickly as I would like because it would be nice to have it done. But it's a 3-year project, and you can only go so fast when you're doing renovations on a project of this size.
Okay, thank you a lot, Peter.
Yep.
I'm worried about what's happening in other cities.
Sure, we are as well.
Yeah, okay.
Safety is what we lead with.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Steve?
Just a quick comment. I'm very happy to see the EV charge revenue running well ahead projections, so that's great to see.
So I
Yeah.
Oh, Mary Lou?
think my questions were answered regarding the 71%. I don't think we need a presentation prior to the budget.
Okay, and I'll send you the link to the page. of
Yeah.
the Budget
That would be-
document, 'cause it is a
for the
big
general
document.
public to see where that 71% actually goes to.
Okay.
Great.
Erica?
Thank
I
you.
was just going to say, I feel like if we could just see the page from the
Right.
budget, I mean, we can look through the
Right.
report, but I bet Ben has that page memorized. Maybe he can just tell us to look on page 70,
So if you don't, but we'll find it.
575.
Yeah, maybe we can put it in the packet for next month.
Okay,
As you know.
thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the financial report?
I think you were going to make one.
Okay, thank you very much. I move that we accept the financial report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so now we're going to move on to public comment. So typically, we limit the public comment session to 15 minutes, which is not normally an issue. However, there's a lot of people in the room. I'm not sure how many are on Zoom. So perhaps, Peter, you want to speak to it?
Well, I know there's some folks here for the Woodbury corridor traffic calming, and I just want to say out front that we are aware of this. It is in design, and that we're not presenting the designs today, that they will be presented on the February meeting. And we anticipate, feedback from you all. The monies are authorized, they exist, and it is not something we have to go get approval for. These monies are in place. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, maybe the February meeting would be appropriate to be held in the evening so that we could capture as many folks who would like to give comment and see the presentation as possible. So if the committee, I know we've talked in the past about considering off hours or special times to meet, and maybe February's meeting could be an evening meeting. Perhaps at New Franklin School or something
I'll second
like
that if that was a motion.
That's a motion.
Okay, and I would say New Franklin School, if that makes sense, if we can do the audio visuals, so people can
February 2nd.
join on Zoom.
What's the date on that?
February 2nd.
That would be the Thursday that we typically meet.
Yeah.
So that was a motion and a second?
Yeah. 6:30?
Sure.
Has got her hand up.
Oh, my question was just, do we have a time? Or what
sorry.
is the typical time?
Sorry.
Typically, we do 6:30.
We'll confirm that, but let's hold on to that for now.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then with that being said, so when we start the public comment, I know there possibly are some people here to speak to Dennett Street. So if you are here to speak for something that's on the agenda, I would prefer that those people get a chance to go first than people that are speaking to things that are not on the agenda, just in the interest of efficiency and fairness. So I'm going to open the public comment, and if you have anything that's on the current agenda, please feel forward to come forward.
Good morning, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. I was kind of in hopes, you've got a couple of residents that actually will be partaking on Bartlett, but you do that after the live people, so I'm going to go first and do the best that I can. I had several phone calls, met with several people concerned about a proposed roundabout that is going to be voted on by the committee tonight, and that roundabout has not really been discussed with the entire residents of that area. Seem to be living, I guess, a nightmare over and over again. This is something that happened during Beverly Hill Road. I don't know why that we're not meeting more in person. COVID, for the most part, yes, we should still have restrictions, but we're not having live people. I'm interested to see that it says that the mini roundabout is presented by DPW and the residents, but it was not all residents. Actually, I believe that at least 3 out of the 4 that will be impacted by this roundabout were never partaking in anything. There was one that contacted me after she went and saw the last meeting, and now we're going to be voting on it today at Parking, Traffic, and Safety. I've got legitimate concerns when it comes to this. We dealt with this for many, many, many years on Beverly Hill Road until we come to a consensus with 100% of every resident that was on there. We should be having meetings on this live, in person, that we can go and address their concerns. You are about to impact a neighborhood that's there, and you are about to impact one person in particular that had gotten a 4-way stop sign put in with years and years of work. And now you're about to eliminate them, and you're going to basically go and have an ongoing flow of traffic. They're not going to be stopping anymore. The stopping saving point, you've got neighborhoods on Woodbury Avenue, some that are in the audience. You had great concerns that were on Banfield Road for years about simply putting a stop sign in to calm that traffic. And we've implemented and done those things. This committee, if it votes today, will actually be removing a very safe way for stop signs. And a roundabout is simply to go and calm traffic. It's within 100 feet of the start of a road. I've never seen or heard anything where a roundabout at the end of one road or the other. We should have done this road differently. I know that it wasn't perfect. Peter knows that. As far as Unitil coming in and digging it up and everything, I don't think many of the residents there object anything, and I think they believe that you're basically going to narrow the street, you're going to widen the sidewalks. This roundabout thing is something that has to be discussed further. And then I'm just going to give my 2 cents. Fleet Street, I'm very concerned when it comes to that with a one-way going all the way through. You're about to eliminate 17 parking spaces at $3,500 a year, according to the city manager. That's almost $60,000 a year that we'll be giving up in revenue that we so desperately need in desperate times. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it was a good man. I like the man.
Go for it.
On Zoom, we got 11.
Okay.
He cares.
2 hands raised. It's a
Politics. Politics.
I brought a few handouts, but I don't have enough, but we can pass them around. You can share.
Good shares.
You can share, yeah. All right, my name is Ryan Baker, and I've lived in Portsmouth for 20-plus years. I am here to fully support drafting an ordinance to eliminate overnight camping on city streets and Portsmouth property. I've spoken to a few of you over the past few months, and I represent, quite a few people that have brought this up as an issue. As we all know, COVID has changed a lot of things within our lives. One major change was the ability to work from home, which has led to the ability to work from basically anywhere using tools like Zoom. Over the past 2 years, there's been a huge increase in people living and working on the road in campers, vans, RVs, even mini school buses and cars. I want to be clear that I fully support people's choices to live and however they want. In fact, it sounds like a lot of fun to travel the country and work from these types of vehicles. I personally would love to be able to do it. My dad actually has a Sprinter van. He drives down in the summer, and he frequently stays at Libby's campground in York when he comes to visit. Needless to say, Portsmouth has seen a dramatic increase of people camping, sleeping in vehicles, especially in the warmer months. And our rules and laws need to be adjusted to reflect this new reality. Most people that live the van life use apps to tell each other where to go and where to stay for free, and to use services such as public toilets, libraries, water, where to get water, and even where to dump their sewage. One of the many apps is called iOverlander, which I've printed a copy for all of you to look at. If you look at the first page, is a map of the seacoast, and Portsmouth is literally the only place you can camp overnight in a vehicle from Newburyport to Saco, Maine. On the second page of the handout are places people have tagged in Portsmouth to spend free nights camping on our streets. Pierce Island, Saunders Fish Market, Parrot Ave, to name a few, right across from the middle school. And on the last page, it goes into more detail and shows some of the comments from people who have spent time sleeping on Parrott Ave right next to the middle school. And I'd like you to read the first post, which discusses somebody who was trying to park on Parrott Ave, which was really busy that night because there was actually a middle school dance right across the street. The net is that we should not allow people to sleep in vehicles at all on city streets or Portsmouth property overnight, let alone 72 hours. We are the only city within a very large radius that allows this to happen, and it is going to catch up with us over time. Technology continues to change the way we live and work, and if we don't do something to change our outdated parking rules when it comes to camping and vehicles, we are going to regret it over the coming years. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I do think that over the past few years, people have started to see this increase. You know, I walk my daughter down to soccer practice, down near the middle school at those fields, and I counted 10 RVs this summer camping overnight on that street alone. And with the changes that we're making on Pierce Island to put in the new bathhouse and to be able to use the pool, do we want to continue to allow people to park on Pierce Island and pay $2 a day to go use the new bathhouse and stay there for 72 hours and then move their car to Parrott Ave and go back and forth yet again and just continue to do it? And maybe there's a place that people can stay where you can actually you just showed the budget. Maybe there's money to be made on RV parking in Portsmouth, but it shouldn't be just wherever you want, and people shouldn't have to be stealthy about it. Parking in front of Saunders Fish Market and taking up a spot for somebody to come and buy fish, or somebody who lives in the South End to live and work, it's just not fair to people. So I think there's a better way to do it, and I think there's definitely a way to help the law enforcement to be able to take care of it in the future.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. So
good morning. Elizabeth Bratter, property owner of 159 McDonough Street, Cabot Street, Clinton Street, and Bartlett Street. And the reason I mention that is because I am the queen of Bartlett Street. I probably on a normal day can go up and down that street about 12 times. I'm very familiar with every little nook and cranny, where the poles are that block your view and stuff like that. I wanted to talk to you about the mini roundabout. The mini roundabout idea comes from Europe, and much of the anecdotal research forgets to mention that in most European countries, there are enforcement cameras in most small towns, and that's where most of these mini roundabouts exist. These cameras take pictures of offenders and of their license plate, and then they get mailed a ticket. Now, these tickets are pretty much, it's your car, it's your car, your plate, and therefore it's your responsibility. So you don't get out of them easily. It's not like it is here, where you can come up with some story sometimes. So I just watched the little video, which was rather long, of the meeting, which I missed. I'm sorry. I try to go to all of them, but sometimes there's a conflict. And what I understood the neighborhood people who were there to say was that they were interested in a pilot program for the roundabout. But then it kind of developed into a conversation about drainage, and that there was some urgency, and we've been looking at this for about 2 years, if I remember correctly. But it sounded like a lot of people preferred stop signs, but something that worked. Now, it's my experience, from having driven down there many times, is that there are people who blow through that stop. Well, they do a California stop. So when I stop, a real stop, because I have been stopped there for doing a California stop, I have to admit, when I do a full stop, the people behind me act like, oh my God, what did you do? But I do it every time because it's the right thing to do. Not everybody drives that way. So my thought on this would be, it would be easier to do a pilot program, which probably could happen now, similar to what happened by White Heron. So one of the things they talked about was they show splitters on the mini roundabout. So I found that the splitter on Woodbury Ave, that's almost to Rite Aid up there, actually does slow cars down. I'm trying to be 100% sure, but I think it does have bump outs on both sides and then the splitter in the middle. But it really pinches the traffic, and I do see they slow down there, but then they speed up once they get past it. But for that moment, they do slow down. So I would like to suggest that instead of doing the mini roundabout right off the bat, how about doing a pilot program where their pilot program involves if it could be done, and the fire department would know that, would involve having bump outs on the left and right side of all four corners and a splitter all made out of bollards for a period of 3 to 4 months, which would be the winter, when we don't have any tourists who have all kinds of other issues that go on when they come through there. The issue I have about the mini roundabout is that right now, the biggest complaint for people is people coming out of Thornton Street, because everybody's going left, they do a California stop, nobody gets to cross the street, nobody gets to come out of there. And if people aren't required to come to some kind of stop or slow down, they are not going to do it. And what's going to happen, in my opinion, is people are going to come down Bartlett Street, they're going to get to the circle, they're just going to go around it, and nobody is going to stop for any of the other intersections. So the cars that have the most cars, they're going to be going back and back and back. And we see that at the Route 4 thing. It is much bigger. It was made bigger to be able to compensate for, it was supposed to be made bigger per the DOT so that people on the side streets could get in. Coming from a side street, I can tell you, you can't get in during any kind of high-volume town. So I believe that during high volumes, when people are trying to get to work, they will not be able to get through that circle if they live on a side street. So I feel strongly that it sounded like a lot of people wanted to keep the stop signs. I think that pinching the traffic there as a pilot would be a way to see what happens when that happens. Do people actually slow down and stop there a little better? Do they at least hesitate before they just drive right through? Before trying to do the a pilot program for the mini roundabout, which sounded like it would be a lot more difficult to do. That's my thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Are there any people in the room that are to speak to stuff on the agenda?
Good morning. I'm Bo from 160 Bartlett Street. I own a house. I moved there in 2007. And I want to say that in the last few months, I have met with neighbors from my street and some maybe from a block away to discuss the new project, the new redesign. So we have gone door to door. We created a Facebook page which is open only to residents of Bartlett Street. It's just easier to manage, and it's really for our street, like Mr. Beckstead mentioned. It's for the people who live on the street. So we have that. We also send emails, and we talk to people on the street. I notice I know a lot more neighbors since we started this than I've lived there 15 years. So that's embarrassing, actually. I sold my car. My husband has a car, but I sold my car 2 years ago, so I walk and I ride my bike mainly, even in the winter. And actually, you need to cover my bike. It's just not, that's another discussion. Anyway, I'm in favor of all the traffic calming measures for Bartlett Street, and the project that was presented by the engineers seemed great to me as a resident of Portsmouth, and I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for listening to us. We had several meetings. We did not hide our meetings, and you had a meeting at the DPW a few weeks ago. So I think we could all give input. Personally, I was born and raised in France, and I moved here when I was 20. I go to France at least 2 or 3 times a year. I'm very familiar with roundabouts. I've never seen the cameras, but maybe it's in bigger cities. There are fewer conflict points at roundabouts. Vehicles have to slow down, and if you're not sure how to go about a roundabout, then you slow down, right? That's the point. And so right now what we see with the 4-way stops, we don't have those in France, by the way. It would be like, who's going what, where? We would get out of the car and fight, so that wouldn't work. But with the 4-way stop right now, we see a lot of people rolling through the stop sign, not even stopping, and it's not safe. One of our neighbors who lives right at this intersection was I think his car was totaled, actually, someone driving too fast. So really we're thinking about safety for the people who are driving, for the pedestrian, the people who live right at this intersection or not too far. So for me, I think the roundabout is really something that it's unknown to a lot of people, but it's worth trying. I think we should. I would go ahead and do it. It would improve the traffic flow. In New Hampshire, according to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, we have over 40 of those. They might be big, they might be smaller. This is a mini one. There's not going to be a tree or a sculpture in the middle. It's going to be flat. It's going to be easy for trucks, although we don't want trucks, but buses, or we're going to make it accessible to everyone. It's not going to prevent an ambulance or a police car to go through. So we just need to get used to it, and I do think it is a way to slow the traffic down but not prevent it. And the whole point is right now our street is really just a throughway, and that's fine. I understand people need to go from the highway to downtown, but it's also a place where there are kids walking to school, walking to the park. We walk to the grocery store. So it would be nice to have this in mind. And so I invite anyone to come talk to me at the end. If you live on Bartlett Street and you haven't heard from this project going on, or you want to participate more, or I'm sorry that we didn't make it obvious enough, and I'm happy to include you in our emails. I'm also supporting any possible traffic calming measures on Dennett Street. It's in the agenda today. And finally, for Fleet Street, as a pedestrian in my town, when I go to the bank or the stores downtown, I want to be safe, so I would really like a design that prioritizes safety for all. And I'm a little concerned about this wide travel lane, that's proposed in the most popular project. But anyway, thank you. I'm sorry I took so long, but I'm hoping we can continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Swisher. I live at 77 Hanover Street, which, for those who don't know, the Hilton Garden Inn, the south end of it is a condominium, and we happen to live on the corner overlooking Fleet Street. So the future of Fleet Street, especially the beauty of it, is important to us in particular. According to the survey, which completed last year, as we all know, the one-way seems to have been the consensus of those surveyed. One thing that we see, and I'm sure the engineers with parking see it also, is that there are trucks that deliver both groceries to the two restaurants that are in that area, and then there are also trucks that stop, and by the way, they drive up onto our sidewalk and have crushed it quite effectively. At the shared office space across the street, I think it's 333 Fleet Street. Blocking traffic, even as it is two-way, if we restrict it down to one-way, we have that much more of a problem. Early morning isn't a problem when there isn't much traffic blocked by the garbage trucks. But now, having said that, I personally would love it to be a tree-lined wide sidewalk. It would look best from my standpoint. But I can see that a factor might not have been completely considered by those surveyed, that there are trucks that block the road, and if it's just a one-way and wide sidewalks, there's no way of getting around that, and the fire department might be concerned with that too.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Engel, 24 Hunking Street, and I just want to voice my opinion about the overnight parking and RV parking in the city. I think that it's time, like Ryan alluded to, that there needs to be some updating of the policy in the city. In the warmer weather, on any given night, there's RVs parked in some of our neighborhoods, Livermore Street, down along the Fish Market, like has been noted, along Mechanic Street. In addition to using city services, some of these RVs have left trash behind. I think that it's a security issue, a safety issue. The situation is not going to get any better without addressing it in some way. I think, again, like Ryan alluded to, other communities have addressed it, and there's a reason for that. And I think that maybe Portsmouth should look at some of these reasons and some of the ways that it had been addressed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Katie Miller, and I live in the South End, and I'm also here to support the ordinance for restricting overnight camping. I walk our neighborhood daily, and I have seen 5, 6, 7 campers in the stretch of Parrott Ave. My concern is it's by a middle school, and people who are parking go there to leave their vehicle to go to work, to go downtown, even to go to their apartments. But somebody who's camping there is potentially in their camper. We have children coming and going from the middle school. We don't know what's going on in those campers. Places that allow camping often require some sort of registration, so you know who's there. Nothing of that sort, to the best of my knowledge, is happening in Portsmouth. So it's a scary thing, personally, from my perspective. And I can also, from my house, see campers out on Pierce Island. And I know this community has worked so hard to make Pierce Island a community place. They've been working hard to eliminate any kind of illegal activities going on there. They've really, really tried to patrol it. You know, to see the campers getting ready to leave, tossing the trash out. I think around Halloween time they decorated some pumpkins, and then they just left them there. Pretty, but that wasn't the intent. So I really think that this needs to be addressed by our town. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Pete Moran, 170 Mechanic Street, and I won't go through all that the folks did about the RV and overnighting. Just hoping that we can find some way to have that, maybe find another location in town that folks could pay to camp overnight, like we do in the boating world, because there's no place. I sent a note to Peter Rice back some time ago, just finding out who to be able to talk to about this, because I walk a lot and I see it. In the last 3 years, we've seen a huge increase in overnight, much like everybody has said. And one of the issues that I focused on at one point was coming down Parrott Ave in the morning and happened to smell this smell that was obviously a head tank, which we call in the boating world a head tank, but a black water tank in an RV, I guess it is, that was down on Parrott Ave right near a drain that obviously was dumped in the street. Can't say it was that person that was there, who knows, but it's becoming an issue, that's all, and it's just concerning. And in my world, or our world, we do a lot of boating, and there is no place that you can go, whether it's municipal or private, from Northeast Harbor to Key West, Florida, and you have to pay, whether you're going into lunch in town at a municipal marina, whether it's overnight, you pay for it. So maybe there's an area somewhere in Portsmouth that could be designated as a campground and for RVs, and that way there's a spot to go to as opposed to just picking any random neighborhood. Anyways, I could go on, but and the pictures, I have pictures galore of different ones that I've seen, so if anybody wants them, I've got maybe 100 of them. So hopefully we can do something about it.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Howdy. My name is Kenneth Ferrer. I'm a Woodbury resident. I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm here kind of voice support for any major or minor traffic calming in Barnet and Dennett, as well as just comment on Fleet and just voice support for increasing the pedestrian walkways, and my concern as a designer myself is that we need to look at a little bit more on those maintaining continuous sidewalks and just visibility and slowing down people through those streets on all three. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dan Freund, 37 Prospect Street. I regretfully wasn't able to attend the last meeting on November 3rd. I'm here to express my concern over the exit ramp at Maplewood and Prospect Street for several reasons. One, as was stated in the meeting last week, there is not ample time when someone is coming around that corner at 20, 30 miles an hour, which I see frequently, to stop. And to the dismay of my neighbor at number 9 Prospect Street, who was hit just 2 years ago, was found to be at fault because there was no proof that that the individual that struck him ran that stop sign. But as was attested, it is common knowledge that people round that turn at excessive speeds. That's my main concern. And then my plead is especially for emergency vehicles, and I've expressed this directly on several accounts whenever I have the opportunity, especially with ambulances coming through that intersection. Just last night, this hasn't been a problem for a while since I first addressed it several years ago, but just last night, an ambulance coming through that intersection rounded without sounding an audible signal. And so I would like to see codified into some manual, some training, that there is a policy that emergency vehicles rounding that corner make an audible signal to warn people exiting Prospect Street that there is an emergency vehicle coming. And lastly, I'd like to see some stepped up enforcement at that turn. Several years ago, when Cuffer Kaltenborn was still on the road, he would sit on the exit ramp and catch people that were turning left when that turn was not a legal turn. And I would like to just see some enforcement. I would like to see that policy codified so that emergency vehicles that are on response don't come through that intersection without making an audible signal warning traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in the room with agenda items? If not, go to Zoom. So if you're on Zoom and you want to speak to something on the agenda, now would be a great time to raise your hand.
Should we take the first one up there?
Sure.
Okay. William, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Bill Davis. I live at 339 Bartlett Street, which is the last house on Bartlett before the intersection with Thornton. And I had 3 brief points to make this morning. Number one, the stop signs that exist there now are not effective, pretty much in any way. Number two, the truck prohibition that was implemented after the opening of Kate Street is consistently disregarded. And thirdly and lastly, in regards to traffic calming, and I'm part of the neighborhood group that was referred to earlier by Ann Blue. We've been working on this for quite a while. I would ask, why aren't we trusting our city professionals that are making the recommendations for how to manage the solution? Not looking for an answer to that question, just they've made some recommendations. I trust them, they're professionals, and I'd recommend that we go with at least adhere to what they're suggesting. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, William, or Bill.
Andrew Cahill. Go ahead, Andrew.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Drew Cahill, Andrew Cahill. I live at 276 Dennett Street with my wife and our 5-year-old daughter. I'd just like to speak briefly to the Dennett Street speeding issue. We moved here a few years ago, and even though the speed limit's posted 20 miles an hour, we've noticed regularly cars travel through here going 30, 35 plus miles an hour. So we've spoken with several neighbors, and everyone sees the same thing, has the same concern. Just briefly, the way that Dennett Street is laid out, there's a sidewalk on one side, for those who don't know, and there is no shoulder really at all between the sidewalk and the road. So since that the road was repaved, the actual height of the sidewalk in many spots is only a few inches really from the road itself. So we see people come flying through here. The neighborhood's saturated with children. New Franklin School is right there, and Dennett Street is the street that everyone has to use coming from one side of the neighborhood into the school to walk there. I would say that the speeding is especially true during commuter hours, and then we noticed it in the summer during the touristy season. Dennett Street's obviously a prime cut-through between the major highways and downtown, and will be even more so with all the development happening in downtown, particularly in the north end of town. This is fine, of course. It's a street; people can drive on it. That's the whole point. But it makes it unsafe in terms of when folks are going above the speed limit. Without having any shoulder there on the road and just having the sidewalk and many small children walking around, really there's no room for error at all on the side of the road. So a driver looking at their cell phone, a child taking one step off the sidewalk. That's why the speed limit is 20 miles an hour and not 30, 35 miles an hour, because it would give the driver just a nanosecond more of an opportunity to react. And without that, without compliance with the speed limit, there's risk of death, really, or serious injuries. So, just in terms of the road itself, again, there's a blind spot when drivers are coming down Dennett from Woodbury. They leave Burkett, the stop sign at Burkett, that's the last stop sign coming into town. There's no other stop sign, there's no speed bump, nothing else between Burkett and Maplewood. So that stretch really becomes like a quarter-mile speedway. And when drivers are coming to the point at Thornton and Dennett, they come up over a hill crest, and they can't see up over the hill crest when they get up over Thornton until they're there. And we actually live a few houses from the hill crest, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been doing yard work in the front yard, heading out for a walk with my daughter or a bike ride, and I've seen someone come up over that hill doing 35, 40 miles an hour. And we have to be extremely vigilant, because that person's going to have no time to react at all if someone is in the road. So, again, I know the city did a brief speed study in this area that I saw a copy of heading into today's hearing. I believe one of my neighbors, Zach Jenkins, who's a professional engineer, offered some written feedback to the study last night and this morning. I would urge the committee to review those comments from him in detail. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a speed study isn't the end all be all. It's just, part of the analysis. But looking at, the way Zach Jenkins is interpreting the math on the speed study, it would seem to me that the speed study supports traffic calming. I'm not quite clear if there's an alternative way to read that, but that's what it appears to be to me. That said, it's just one piece of the problem, one piece of the analysis. I can tell you from like a real, real life bystander perspective, this is a serious issue. The city has a chance to fix, at least attempt to fix the problem with potentially a stop sign at Dennett and Thornton, or some speed bumps or speed tables. It's common sense, really. It's a chance to fix a problem before something unfixable happens. So we'd appreciate the attention to the issue. Like I said, I talked with several neighbors who all feel the same way. So with that, thank you all for your time, your continued service to the community, and we appreciate the attention to the issue. That's it.
Thank you, Drew.
Okay, next is Teresa Hill. Teresa? Go ahead, Teresa. Are you there?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
There we go. Sorry about the echo.
She should mute
I
something.
apologize for not being there in person. Not feeling well. My name is Teresa Hill. I'm at 340 Thornton Street, which is at the intersection with Bartlett. I'm very excited about the traffic calming measures all along the length of Bartlett. I think the folks, particularly on Lower Bartlett, got the crossings moved and sidewalks are going to be narrowed, and hopefully we'll be adding some more trees. But I have to say that I'm really not a fan of the roundabout. I moved into this house almost 30 years ago, and when I moved in, there were no stop signs on Bartlett. And I bought the house, a historic house in a historic neighborhood on a very busy street at a very busy intersection. I knew that when I bought it. I don't think I would buy this house if it had a roundabout in its front door. Before we had the stop signs, the name of the game was the 95% people who go through the intersection come up the hill on Bartlett and take left on Bartlett. Most of these are local people who are avoiding the traffic circle, frankly, and that's not going to change. At the time, the game was to see how quickly you could go through the intersection. And that included trucks at the time and cars. And my neighbor, the Beaches across the street, worked very hard to get the four-way stop put in so the cars would stop running into our houses, particularly his. He has a guardrail in front of his house now because of this. When the stop signs were put in, actually the intersection got a little louder because people were slowing down and then speeding up. But it did calm the traffic. Our historic neighborhood is littered with four-way stops. And I know people have tried to tell me over and over that our intersection does not merit a four-way stop because of the traffic volume. But again, there are four-way stops all throughout the neighborhood on Dennett and Thornton, and they do calm the traffic. There's always going to be somebody who's not going to stop or who's going to roll. But my biggest problem with the roundabout, or even the raised table design, is that the stop signs will be removed. Please don't take our stop signs away. I also think that the roundabout is not appropriate for this neighborhood. It is a historic neighborhood. Most of the houses were built more than 100 years ago. And although this is a busy through street, it is part of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and I hope you feel better.
Okay, next is Jonathan Sandberg. Oh.
Usually has a spicy.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Sandberg. I live at 160 Bartlett Street. Listen, I'm not an expert. What I want for my street is what's safest. And if you do some research, if you Google advantages of roundabout over four-way stop, you'll find there's an incredible amount of research that shows that roundabouts are much safer. They reduce the number of traffic incidents as well as the severity of traffic incidents. And if that's what the data shows, then that's probably the way to go. The reason why it's suggested that they're more successful than four-way stops is that all the traffic going in one direction reduces the opportunity for head-on collisions, which are the most dangerous kinds of collisions. I know that right now what we have is not successful. The police have said that it's one of the most police intersections in the city. There is often a cruiser parked right there at Dennett and Thornton, and that's not, if they're putting that kind of resources into it, it means that the design before we stop, there's not a lot of compliance. And so I really think the important thing to do is to listen to the evidence, listen to our experts, also look at other examples. In Europe, where I travel quite frequently, four-way stops don't exist. Everything is either a mini roundabout like is being proposed, or is one way has priority. But four-way stops don't exist. It's an anomaly in the world, and a lot of states are eliminating them now as they're shown to be ineffective and unsafe. And so now the only caveat I have is at the presentation that we had last month, there were competing proposals, one for a raised a raised intersection, and one for a roundabout. And I really couldn't find any evidence. I was really searching. I was hoping that there were studies existed that compared those two options, and I couldn't find any. And so if there's evidence that shows that a raised intersection reduces traffic conflicts more than roundabouts do, then that's what I would be in favor of. But I don't, so that's what I have to say. I think we have to listen to our experts. We have to look at evidence, and that's how we make a decision, not based on feelings and sentimentality, or the fact that we are difficult. We have a hard time changing things just because we don't have any, or I don't think we have any mini roundabouts. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be open to them. And so we have to broaden our horizons and be open-minded and do what is safest. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, next is Thomas Gross.
Good morning. My name is Tom Gross. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you very much for allowing me a couple of seconds. I live on 295 Dennett Street across from Mr. Cahill, and we have about 8 neighbors here who have agreed that their speed is a problem here. One thing that I'm adding just Mr. Cahill's comments, because a couple of things he didn't realize is in the last 5 years we've had many accidents right here at this corner of Dennett Street and Thornton. We've had one dog that was killed. We had one woman who was getting a baby out of her car, and another car came by over the top of the hill and ripped off her door while she was reaching in to get the baby out. Another person of our neighbors was backing out of the driveway, another car coming over the top of that small hill at Dennett Street. And if you notice from the map, it's a hill, Hunter's Hill, but there's a slight turn to the right, which doesn't seem much on the map. But if you realize, if you come out here actually, just drive back and forth a couple times, you realize that it's a huge blind spot. So we had somebody else also backing out of their driveway, very carefully, slowly, was hit by a car coming east on Dennett. coming from the Bartlett area, coming over the top of the hill. So we all agree that the speed is a problem, and we would like you all to address it because we've already demonstrated that it really is unsafe. And the person who hit the dog was going too fast. He was very apologetic. He stopped. He was very, very kind about it, but he was really shook up. There was another incident where somebody hit my car, and then took off. And so I had to fix that on my own. So I really want and I'm sorry for being so rude to people sometimes, but I'm very emotional about it. So thank you for what you said.
Thank you, Tom.
Let's see. Judy Miller.
Good morning. Judy Miller, 77 Hanover Street. I'd like to address the Fleet Street reconstruction project. I am in favor of wider sidewalks, but I'd also like to mention something that I've mentioned before, and hopefully the utility lines can be buried. With the point made earlier by my neighbor Jim Swisher about delivery trucks, in this area we have the Legends, Shalimar, 110 Grill, Row 34, the Green Room, the Juicery, and the Wilder. I'm wondering if, looking at this whole Fleet Street reconstruction project, if a loading zone could be created for certain hours of the morning, and perhaps that could be in front of the Shalimar and the Legends. These trucks need someplace to go, and currently they go anywhere that they can. So perhaps the city can think about a loading zone for part of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. That's all. So I guess that's everyone on Zoom. So now people would.
Mr. Chairman, Martin Ryan showed up.
Yes, he
I wasn't
probably
sure
has
whether he
something on the
wanted to
agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to
speak to the.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Martin Ryan, 221 Woodbury Avenue. We've been working with Peter and Peter's staff, and his recommendation of the roundabout is something we accept and support. I say we.
I'm sorry, I have to caveat that. I did not recommend the roundabout.
Oh, I'm
if you
sorry.
recall, at the meeting, the question was asked, and I said that was not my recommendation. So, not that I don't think it'd be perfectly fine, but I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay.
Well,
we find the roundabout a very acceptable solution. I think anything that is proposed would be a much needed improvement. But I do feel that, we've all heard the horror stories of accidents and hitting houses and things. We feel like the roundabout is a solution that could be tried. And if it works better than other solutions, that it could be adopted and made permanent. If not, it could be reversed without too much headache. So I support the roundabout. I know if I support it, Peter will execute it properly, and there are other people in our neighborhood that feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And now I'll open it up to people that have non-agenda items, and I thank you for your patience.
Good morning. My name is Lenore Weiss Bronson. I live at 828 Woodbury Avenue, which is the corner of Farm Lane, across from Corpus Christi. I'm here to, first of all, to thank you for those of you who are instrumental in addressing our needs on Woodbury, residential Woodbury Avenue, which is about a mile long with no requirements to stop or slow down. Well, basically to stop. And thank you for thinking in terms of a design to address these issues. I'd just like to really emphasize, and I speak for a lot of our neighbors, that it's important that the design is approached from a sort of systemic viewpoint, because we have so many really important junctures throughout. We have 23 accesses and egresses on that stretch of Woodbury. So we also have the school, of course. So there are a lot of things to consider, almost at each access and egress. But I know that you'll look into that for the design. I just hope that you do include the people who've lived there for decades, especially, for everybody, actually. There have been so many accidents, near accidents, that involved bodily harm. One woman who died after she was hit in the crosswalk. And pets. The other day, as you know, or not long ago, someone on Woodbury had their whole front of their house was driven into, and their front lawn now has to have, they have to install a stone wall. I fortunately have a stone wall because it's been hit before, and if I hadn't, I probably would have had someone in my living room. The stop sign at Farm Lane, which is not a four-way stop, just that the T there, the stop sign at Farm Lane, has been taken out twice by a car speeding from Woodbury into Farm Lane. The last time was Christmas Eve a year ago. Things that I'd like to think in terms of when you come up with a design, think in terms of what you've done in the past with stop signs and possibly tables, speed tables. For example, on Lincoln, there are 7 four-way stops with a lot of signage. We don't have signage that shows that school children may be crossing or that a school bus is stopping. We don't have any of that kind of indication. So you have 7 four-way stops with a lot of signage on Lincoln, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I understand that we are in a different part of town, but I really think that's something that could be considered for us, not necessarily 7. We suggested in our proposal about 4. Then also on Banfield Road, we've been told that we don't warrant stop signs in the past, and on Banfield Road we have T-stops with flashing or blinking stop signs. I suppose they're necessary, but they're much more necessary on Woodbury. And there are other details that we could go into. I did, just really quickly, if I may, want to play a message that I had on my voicemail, and I got permission. I was told that a voicemail is public property, so to speak. In 2015, actually, I have 2 of them. One, I'll only play one, but in 2015, I did receive a call after coming to this committee from then member here, Ken Smith, regarding the traffic signs, because we've been told over the years that we didn't, our neighborhood didn't warrant them. So I hope this works, and if it doesn't, I can send you the transcript.
Ken Smith. Thanks for my call. I got your message. Sorry I couldn't take the call. I had a meeting. We had no plans in the city yet.
This is not related.
Dealership putting John the handcuff. So we're still working on that, and we're going to get vigilant on that.
That's something
The
that...
second thing is about stop signs. It is because of some of the changes to the wall. That's why we're looking at adding them back in to see what we can do. And as for the sign at the circle, I had already talked to Peter Rice about that. And he said that the state put the signs on hold because they were going to do some changes to the circle and new signage and all of that. And that those signs are coming. I've asked him to give me a report on Thursday when I see him at PTS to tell me, what the time schedule is. As soon as I have that, I will keep you informed. Hope all's well.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
And so I just want to say that was 7 years ago, and we've been really patient. I also had a message from Brad Lowndes saying we will get back to you. We have, we're considering making changes to Woodbury and so forth, and that was 2013. They were great to work with us, and I know they meant well, but we've really been pretty patient, I'd say. So I was also wondering if we could, in preparation for the design, have a traffic volume count on residential Woodbury. The last one was done in 1990. 78, and the number of weekly vehicle passages, if you want to call them, on the residential part of Woodbury, that mile was, in a week, 57,000 plus. We have school kids walking. We have people walking with their dogs. I actually sometimes avoid working in my front yard because I've seen so many accidents or near accidents. For example, a neighbor pushing his daughter across the crosswalk and with his dog in a baby, in a stroller. And a car came up from 95 because it is an incline. They don't see that crosswalk, and there's no signage right at the crosswalk. And he came within this far of hitting them. And of course, it traumatized them and me too. So that's a common situation. We would also be interested in the neighborhood to know, and I know I approached Peter on this, and you did give me instructions about how to get it, but I'm not quite sure how we could get the procedures that were followed to close Echo Avenue. I know there was, I called the state about that. They said we don't deal with city streets, but I know that the state was involved in closing Echo, so I don't know the details, but if we could have that sort of maybe a summary of what was done and the procedures that were followed to close Echo Avenue, because the traffic that would have gone up Echo is obviously going up Farm Lane with all of the traffic from the car dealerships to and from and fishing gear. So thank you very much. We appreciate some action as soon as possible from you. And thank you for agreeing to include neighbors in a meeting in February.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to make public comment? Not seeing any, I'll close the public comment. Thank you, everybody, for coming and speaking. And we're going to move on to the presentation of Fleet Street. However, we did have a number of people talk about overnight camping. Does anybody want to make a motion to move that?
This will be move that to the February.
No, just move that forward.
Oh yeah, let's move it forward because that's can be
Quick
done
one.
quickly, I think.
In a second?
You guys can stay there. Stay there.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so A, overnight camping on city streets and property, request to restrict by resident, sample motion, move to request draft ordinance, and report back from city staff at next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think I have seen what all of the residents have commented on and have been very concerned about it. So I'm glad that we're bringing this up for an ordinance regarding campers in the city.
Great, and I'll just comment that we did look at the ordinance prior to this meeting with legal, and it's actually fairly complex. Because we don't define parking as occupied or not occupied as a vehicle, so it's going to take us some time to make modifications, and then it'll have to go through 3 readings of the city council, but we're hopeful that we'll have something in place by the spring.
That'd be great. It's a big problem in the summer.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, now presentations, Fleet Street, result of public survey and cross-section alternatives by Underwood Engineers Incorporated.
Yes, Underwood, the consultant on the Fleet Street project, is here to present the results of the public survey that was done last year. Dan from Underwood will do the presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You may want to pull your microphones closer to you.
Eric, do you want to make it full screen on it? Oh, the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint. Yep. Do the slideshow.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Rochette. I'm with Underwood Engineers. And I have Jake Stoddard with me. I'm the project manager for the Fleet Street area reconstruction, and Jake is project engineer working alongside me.
This is, as Eric said, this is kind of a follow-up to, I think Zach and I were here last November, maybe?
Yes.
Just quickly presenting concepts that were going to be used in the public web survey. And so we're here today to just kind of briefly review the public process and go through our recommendations. So just real quick, the project team, Zach sitting next to me is the assistant city engineer, and Eric Eby. They're helping us guide us through this from the public works side of things. The consultant team, it's ourselves, Underwood Engineers. We did use RSG for the traffic modeling. They are, as far as I know, they are still the firm that maintains the traffic model, and they had the most recent one at the time, so they're familiar with the city's operation. And then for landscape architect, we're using Woodburn and Company, who has also done a lot of work here in the city with miscellaneous projects. Again, the purpose, just here to kind of review the public info process, the concepts that we presented, and then go through some of the results and the recommendations for moving forward. Just as a quick reminder, the Fleet Street area project itself covers more than just Fleet Street from a utility improvement point of view. It is a sewer separation project that includes water line replacements and full utility upgrades. Fleet Street itself, we are looking at burying the electrical underground. That is part of the design. And then, but the concepts that were presented and we're talking about today is specifically for Fleet Street itself, which is also part of the city's consent decree for separation. Sewer and combined sewer separation, pulling the drainage out of the sewer system. Public information to date, our approach for this project was to start out by just listening, trying to listen to the public, we held a public meeting just to try to get some feedback about, I guess, needs, wants, desires, just to kind of get a list of what people are looking for. We also held office hours. We are located right in town, so our office is convenient for the public to come in and provide feedback and input. We did get a little feedback, but due to a lot of the public input process being online or Zoom and COVID stuff, I think we felt that the input we got was fairly limited. So then we decided to proceed or try a web survey, which was active. I think it was just before Thanksgiving 2021 through just after the first of the year in January 2022. And that was after presenting our comments briefly here in November of 2021.
The idea was to get kind of the most active time of year in the downtown, so we would get the most engagement.
So we had used the input we had gotten to date, and we developed 3 concepts. Concept A was, and I guess it's a bullet further down, but there are a significant amount of space limitations in the corridor. I guess what I referred to as the lower section, but the parking garage block between Congress and Hanover is pretty restricted from a width point of view. So the concepts were fairly limited, but we did have concept A, two-way traffic without parking, concept B, one-way traffic with parking, and concept C, one-way traffic without parking. The one-way travel direction that is being considered is, I believe it's the northerly direction from Court Street to Hanover, and essentially that's driving away from the fire station, so giving the fire department the ability to just pull right out and take off. And we did split the corridor kind of into 2 sections and got feedback on them separately. The first section was
the parking garage block from Hanover Street to, from Congress Street to Hanover, and the second section was from Court Street to Congress Street. And as I said, there is, throughout the corridor, there is limited space, and replacing with the existing configuration, which is two-way traffic with parking, essentially does not, it does not fit in the lower section near the parking garage. And I think it would be very tight to fit up in the upper section between Court Street and Congress due to having minimum width sidewalks for ADA and the ability for the city to properly maintain the sidewalks with the field tractors, with the sidewalk tractors, and to just be able to accommodate the width needed for just minimum street lighting and whatnot to do that at a minimum. And we did use traffic modeling to evaluate the impacts of the one-way on the traffic circulation. The results of the traffic modeling, this was pulled right from the memo that RSG provided us after their evaluation, and they did say that projected changes in delay and queues associated with the one-way Fleet Street scenario are minimal and would not have a noticeable impact on operations. Getting into the concepts, Concept A, as I said, was two-way traffic with no parking. Essentially, it maintains the existing traffic pattern, two-way. It does allow for some pedestrian amenity improvements, but essentially it's minimal improvements, just getting a usable width and providing some lighting. And this is kind of what we considered a narrow sidewalk. And I think it's in the 6 to 7 foot range. This is what it looks like in a kind of a schematic cross section. Just for point of reference, the left side of the cross section would be, in this case, it's 55 Congress Street, or the parking garage side, and the right side of the cross section is the Franklin block. So the two-way traffic would just simply be two 11-foot lanes in either direction, and then the sidewalk on each side. Concept B, one-way traffic with parking, would provide moderate improvements of pedestrian amenities. It gives us a kind of a wide sidewalk, maybe in the getting into the 10-foot range. We did focus in talking with our landscape architects, the idea was to focus the wide sidewalk on the what they referred to as an active side of the roadway, which would be the side with a lot of the most storefronts and retail spaces. It does provide some space for some trees, and it would provide some space for benches or for some seating. This one would maintain the existing parking layout throughout the corridor, and I think it would actually add 2 parking spaces, primarily down by the barber shop. I think it's Scuttlebutt Barbers, and then what used to be the Drift clothing store. I guess the change or the conversion of Fleet Street to a one-way in the northerly direction does provide the ability to eliminate the left turn lane on Congress Street, and this we see as an opportunity to also replace that left turn lane with some pedestrian amenities. You could essentially take all that and turn it into sidewalk with seating areas and whatnot. And again, the one-way traffic pattern is supported by the model. This is what that looked like schematically. Again, the left side of the cross section is the parking garage side. In this case, it's 155 Fleet Street, which I think is kind of the Ohive building. I think there's some insurance companies in there, and then the Franken block again on the other side. It's a narrow sidewalk on the parking garage side with an 18-foot travel lane. I think the 18 feet came from discussions earlier on with the fire department about what they would need to not just get a fire truck through, but I think if they had to stop and put the outriggers out on the ladder truck, I think the 18 feet is what they were looking for, and then an 8-foot, and then the 8-foot parking bays for parallel parking. In plan view, this is what that looks like. I tried to add on some of the restaurants and the retail spaces on the down here, showing the active side. With the Wilder, I think there's a hair salon, the Franklin Eatery, and then a couple other storefronts. And then you can see the parking is generally where it is currently. And then this is the second section from Court to Congress. Again, the parking spaces are generally where they exist now. Here they are shown on the opposite side of the street, just to try to get a roadway alignment through here that is aesthetically pleasing. And then a couple additional parking spaces down on the end by the barber shop. And then we did try to show here just the area on Congress Street where some sort of pedestrian amenities could be added. Concept C, one-way traffic, no parking. This essentially maximizes the pedestrian amenities. What we call the extra wide sidewalk. Again, it's on the active side of the roadway. Still provides space for trees, and the seating areas for this option would get into allowing for space for tables and chairs, and not just merely some benches. Again, this does eliminate the left turn lane on Congress. I do want to point out that I know there has been the goal or the focus on this project as well to bury the electrical lines that are on Fleet Street, get them underground. That does require some pretty extensive sized vaults to bury the transformers. There's not a lot of space in the area to add transformers, and they need to be located within a certain distance from where the services enter the buildings. And I think we're looking at burying one on Fleet Street, which I think would require a vault that's 10 or 12 feet wide, and it can't go within a traveled way. It has to be in a pedestrian area, just because of the traffic loading over the access grates. It's large access grates, and I believe they need to be open grates, or the Eversource wants them to be open grates for heat loss and whatnot. So that would have to be figured out. But so this option essentially provides the most space to us to be able to find a location for that vault underground, which would be, I think we're looking at the bottom of the alleyway that goes between Gillies and the building next to it, on the opposite side of the street. And again, the one-way traffic worked with the model. Schematically, this is what it looks like, pretty similar to the other one, except you just see we have the wider sidewalk here with some seats shown. And I'm not an arborist either, but maybe with more space, you might get into some having a little more space for a bigger tree selection too. On plan view, it looks pretty similar to the concept C, except we did show the loss of parking areas here in the orange. This is the parking garage block. And then this is the upper block from Court Street to Congress. And again, the Congress area that we can add some sidewalk elements. So we did the web survey with these concepts. As I said, we wanted to give it a shot as a way to really get some public input and feedback. We developed a poster showing all of these concepts, and we displayed the poster in the project area on Vaughan Mall, Fleet Street. I think there was some up on Congress Street, maybe up towards Market Square. I can't remember exactly where we put them all, but I think we had 20 or something of them printed, so they were around. It was active from November through January, so about 2 months, and we did have a pretty good participation rate, we think. We had 63 participants that were labeled as residents or businesses in the corridor, and the general public, we had almost 500 participants. And we did, when looking at the results, we did try to prioritize, the results that we saw from the residents and the businesses, and not as much the general public, since, the general public being tourists, people that come in from other cities and whatnot. Just some pictures of the posters and where they were around town. And so the web survey results, for the section between Hanover and Congress, about 50% of the resident vote was for the one-way traffic with no parking in that bottom section. And then option B came in second with about 35% of the votes. And for the second section, from Congress Street to Court Street, it was actually an exact tie between option B and option C, one way with parking and one way with no parking. And just as a general note, the general public, I think, usually favored option C. So we took these results and we decided to move forward and recommend kind of a split approach, since it was kind of it had clear results with the residents. We were selecting option C for the section between Hanover Street and Congress, the one-way traffic with no parking. And for the second section between Congress and Court Street, we went with option B, one-way traffic with parking. We feel that this maximizes pedestrian improvements where most desirable. The areas where parking garage access has a lot of pedestrians and retail spaces. And it also helps maintain some of the parking throughout the corridor. We do acknowledge that parking is an important piece in the downtown, and it's a fine balance of trying to fit everything in that we can in the limited space. So all in all, it does maintain some spaces. I think it's a net loss of 5 spaces on the corridor, and all the parking would be, in this case, up between Court Street and Congress. And just some of the bullet points on that continued. It improves pedestrian features at Congress Street, provides the best opportunity to accommodate the underground utilities, and again, the one-way traffic was generally supported by the model. So just to kind of go through the project schedule as we see it right now, January 2023, obviously that's right now, that's today. We're presenting this to you guys so you can go through it, digest it a little bit. And then in the next month or two, depending on how the process unfolds, we expect that we'll get comments or feedback on the concepts from the committee. And then we understand that once we get the committee's, I guess, approval or concurrence on the options moving forward, the project will go to City Council hopefully sometime in the spring to get approval there. And then we would expect, if things kind of move smoothly, we would expect to kind of proceed with the final design later on this summer. Start of construction, there's a lot of wheels in motion right now. Some of it would be based on how the process goes with getting approval on the traffic, the circulation concepts that we've shown, but it also is dependent on completion of outfall improvements on Maplewood Avenue going to North Mill Pond when we were during the design process, and we need to upgrade the capacity at the outfall that is currently existing on North Mill Pond that comes from Deer Street to accommodate all the stormwater that will be added to the system. We're currently in design for that now, working through permitting and easement things. And so depending on how all that goes, will kind of be dependent on the construction of that. And that needs to be constructed before we do drainage work on Fleet Street. So that is what I had for you guys this morning.
So just to, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yeah, question.
Just to clarify, the project's now broken into two parts. The Fleet Street portion of the project is going to be 2 years from now, at best. We're doing the first section, which is a drainage project from Hanover Street, the end of Fleet Street, Hanover Street to Deer Street, Maplewood, up to the North Mill Pond. That has to get done first. The reason we wanted to bring this forward now was that the survey was done last year. We wanted to bring it forward so that people had the opportunity to digest the survey and digest the recommendations before we made some public commitment to one option or another. So the intent is not to make a decision right now. The intent is really just an opportunity to kick the tires, ask some questions, and just think about it. So I just wanted to make that really clear.
So we have 2 years to get to Gillies? Is that
Unless we close the streets down again for on-street parking or dining.
Peter, is it in capital for next year?
There's existing monies for capital for the drain portion. There's additional monies being asked for to complete the project this year in the budget, in the CIP.
The only thing I don't like about it is the five spaces we're losing downtown.
Well, so if I could just clarify, if you went with option B completely and didn't do a blended, there'd be a net increase in 2 parking spaces?
Yes.
Okay, so one option adds parking spaces.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Steve?
Nice job, thank you. And I think the city's done a really good job with the public input process, and I think you've ended up in a really good spot with the blended concept that you're showing. I think the benefits to the city of doing this far outweigh the 5 parking spaces that would be displaced. We have a parking structure nearby, and the economic benefit and activity and safety are great. Just one question. In the 18-foot lane configuration, the one-way, what do you envision as the pavement markings there? Is it like a Shero marking, or I'm just worried about 18 feet's pretty wide. We need it. We absolutely need it for the fire, but I'm wondering, what will the public see on street? What's the kind of preferred marking for that?
We haven't really looked at that yet. I think right now we're still just trying to get some sort of traction or a direction on what we want to move forward with. And once that happens, then we can definitely look into configurations on the striping. I know there's been discussions about loading zones and some concerns about that, and so maybe some of it includes a physical loading zone that's striped with 18 feet of pavement. We think it does provide enough space for a truck to be parked on the side of the road and still get vehicles through. It probably even increases the safety, because you only have traffic going in one direction. You don't have two-way traffic trying to alternate around the intersections and whatnot. So
excellent. Okay, very pleased with this. It looks good.
City Manager?
If I may, I think what we've heard from some residents, some business owners, and as well as tourists and visitors to the city, as well as policy discussions with the City Council, there's definitely been a thoughtful conversation about prioritizing pedestrians and other users of our downtown than just vehicles. So I think this strikes a nice balance of losing some spaces, considering the amenities and the vitality that wider sidewalks bring. And I think this is a great place to be right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I saw this as compromise at the end. So I think, like Steve said, that's where we're ending up, and I feel better as you went on, that once you hit that, narrowed it down to 2 and only lost 5. It's like you don't want to lose parking, but it was a compromise.
Thank you.
Eric?
Thanks. I want to acknowledge that I did the traffic modeling, so I don't think I'm super biased here. I'm not going to comment about the modeling or I'm not going to comment on that. I am curious about the 18-foot lane. I get that that's for fire safety, but it is really, really wide for a one lane. That's wide enough that it could be two-way traffic, which I think is harder. It gets harder to enforce, and you have people making silly decisions when it's that wide. In terms of the need for the fire trucks, and then it sounds like it needs to be that wide for the supports on the truck. Is that something like, can the sidewalk, does it have, like, what, is there any wiggle room there? We have other space, right? Like, we've got these sidewalks, we've got potentially some parking in some places. Is there any room to narrow that and use some of the other space in the right of way for some of that secondary need?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
So this project, right, first of all, I'd like to thank the Underwood Group and RSG and city staff. One of the challenges that we have is getting our vehicles to an incident, and then once it's there, getting it set up. And this was, again, a compromise on a series of things, and the 18 feet is a bit of a compromise because it is less room than we really need to be able to set our vehicle up there. However, given the traffic flow and the fact that we don't think we're going to be impeded, that we feel comfortable enough in that short span, so to speak, and the limited number of buildings that we're looking at there, that it's measured risk and that we can use the sidewalk and we would be able to get the vehicle set up. And also understanding, too, that this is an active city, and that we do have delivery vehicles, where we have snow in the wintertime, those types of things. So there was a lot of discussion that went on, and we physically went and set the trucks up in various places to make sure that it would work.
Thank you.
If I may also speak, I think the width also had to do with vehicles being able to pull over and the fire truck being able to pass by as well. Yep. So they wouldn't need pulling over cars wouldn't need to put wheels on the sidewalk or anything of that nature.
One of the concerns was that's an artery for us to be able to get out of downtown, especially when we have bridge traffic and things really back up and clog downtown.
Yeah. Any other questions? I've got two for consideration. One, kind of in regards to the 18-foot width. Is this a candidate for, I don't know if the term is continuous sidewalks, like we have on Chestnut Street, where it's the sidewalk and the street are kind of all one plane, but there's a demarcation of blocks,
we'd have to look at that. I understand what you're asking.
Okay.
My gut reaction would be probably not, given the volume of traffic as a cut-through area. Typically, you do that on it's more like a pedestrian predominant shared roadway. And it needs, we're looking at those in streets that are, Chestnut Street is an example.
Right.
Not a high volume, slow speed. It's very obvious that pedestrians predominate. If you're coming off of Congress and you're turning onto a street that, pedestrians could be out in the middle of the street, that would be problematic. So, but it's something that we can look at more thoroughly. But my gut feeling is that it probably, and Eric, you could speak to it better than I, but I don't think it would be a good application.
Okay. And then the second question is the 18 feet from the firehouse to Congress certainly makes a lot of sense. Is it equally important for the next section as well, as far as getting out of town if there's the bridge up or something?
Again, right, this is where we were talking about that compromise,
yeah.
Right? So now we're looking at a corner, right, on the corner of Fleet and Congress, where we have access to Congress Street, where we can still get access to that building on the corner, right, on either side.
Yep.
But then as you further down the street, then we're looking at essentially talking about, short jacking our trucks and setting them up in an emergency operation mode to be able to access those buildings on the left-hand side of the street, right? And then the likelihood, again, of being able to access the parking garage. Again, we're able to do it off of Hanover Street, unimpeded.
Okay.
So a little bit of a trade-off here,
Yep.
right? Is it ideal? No, from a public safety, but again, it's measured risk, right? I think the likelihood of something occurring and us not being able to access the building at all is even more remote.
Okay, thanks. And then the final one, and this is probably a unrealistic wish, but I know the mayor's brought this up before, is since we are doing a comprehensive rebuild of the whole street and the sewers and digging down deep, is my understanding, there's been talk of retractable bollards potentially being used somewhere in the city. Is this a candidate for any of that?
We're really not supportive of that.
Okay.
It's very expensive, very prone to challenges with freezing conditions, and it would be an awful lot of money for something with very little value. So the recommendation from staff would be no.
Okay, and I think this is probably the best candidate that we're ever going to have to implement these, considering the project we're doing now and the location. So
Yeah,
I think that's a good recommendation for us going forward.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and anybody at home that has questions, send them into the city. Like as Peter said, we're not going to be doing anything too quickly, so we have lots of time to evaluate concerns.
The goal here is really just to keep it in people's minds so that we didn't wait 2 more years and we go, yeah, we did a study, we did a survey. We want to make sure people understand that this has been thoroughly vetted. We are moving forward with something, and just keep it in people's minds so they can digest it, let it percolate. And hopefully, when time comes, be more acceptable.
Steve?
Would it be worthwhile to formalize kind of a consensus public comment, public committee feedback that we like the hybrid? Would that be useful? I mean, I certainly think it's worthy of such, but
I would hesitate to make a formal statement at this time. I think letting it percolate a little while. What we're going to commit to is putting this information online, the results of the survey online, and that way people will have the opportunity to see it, and there'll be some feedback. We've already heard some concerns expressed, earlier on, so it's something that people you're going to want to talk about. So I think we don't want to be premature.
Harold?
Can I ask the chief a question, fire chief, please?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Bill, we're dealing with the Franklin block, and you got when you use your ladder truck and you've got the outriggers there, have you given consideration of the amount of space the outrigger's going to take up?
That's part of the discussions that we've had, and additionally, as I was explaining earlier, that's part of the compromise here, is that we can get the truck onto the corner from Congress Street and still be able to fly the ladder and be able to make access. One of the benefits is if we're burying the utility lines, that won't be in our way to impede us, where we'd have to move the truck and get it to a different angle.
I see. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
All right, and I guess we don't have any action to take, so we'll just move on to the next agenda item, and I thank you guys for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
So 2 is Maplewood Avenue, request to prohibit parking between Route 1 bypass and Dennett Street by resident. And I believe we might have a presentation from Eric.
Yes, bring that slide up here. Okay. Okay. So this is a slide of the area in question. Resident was concerned about, there's a single parking space at this location on Maplewood Ave, just before Dennett Street, coming down the hill from the bypass. And the request was to eliminate that parking space to make it safer for bicyclists coming down Maplewood. And we looked at the entire section of Maplewood here, and what is shown in blue is the areas where a bike lane is suitable. There's enough width for a bike lane. Okay. And then the areas in red where there's a very narrow shoulder and it's not suitable for a bike lane. This section of Maplewood Ave is very narrow from the bypass down to Dennett Street. So even with the removal of a parking space at this location, we would not have enough room for a true bike lane along this area. There is no parking in a few areas. These bubbles are where parking is already prohibited in the ordinances. It is allowed in this section, but it is so narrow that people are not parking there. They're only parking in this one space in front of this residence where it is wide enough. It's 8 feet wide. It's suitable for a parking space. So recommendation at this point is to leave it as is. Removing this parking space would not benefit bicycles in any way because they're not able to have a separate bike lane in this area. They're forced really to ride in the street as it is, and this is not going to give them any extra room except for, for a 20-foot distance here in front of this one house. So, looking back at when we had our Maplewood Ave reconstruction project a few years ago, originally this section was looked at to widen this section of Maplewood to increase it for a bike lane. But even then, because of the limited right-of-way, it still would have been a minimal travel lane width and a minimal bike lane width. So it was not ideal for a bike lane either. Really, in this situation, this is a place where the bicyclists need to, ride in traffic. It's the safest thing is for them is to take the lane and not try to get squeezed off onto the shoulder. So by eliminating that one parking space, you're not really providing much benefit to the bicyclists.
Thank you. Erica?
Can I ask, I recognize that the shoulder is pretty narrow, so it's not wide enough to kind of officially be a bike lane, but I'm just thinking in terms of if one is riding along that corridor, there is something wide enough to be a bike lane, and then there's this pinch point, and then there's a kind of one car parked there. I'm just thinking in terms of like the practical reality of riding in that area, and I haven't ridden there, so I can't comment on that. If that one car would be disruptive, if someone kind of can squeeze in the edge long enough to get through that section back to a space that's wider, but all of a sudden there's a parked car that kind of forces them into the travel way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they'd probably be riding along the white line anyways. Other than a car door opening, which would be, from one car occasionally happening, and it's mostly the resident. I spoke to the resident who used to live there, and they said, yeah, it would occasionally be used by someone coming to visit them, but they have a driveway there for that house, so they're not parking out there all the time. It's not an area, to use that area, if you're on a bike, you would have to go to your right to use that area. It's not in line with the rest of the shoulder out there. So it's, it would be limited benefit to any bicycle.
Mr. Chairman? I appreciate your point, and it is something that we've wrestled with, as Eric had mentioned. We looked at it, and I think it's worth looking at again and trying to figure out if there is a way to accommodate to make it, yes, we won't technically be a bike lane, but it'll be a safer shoulder. And so that's something that we've talked about, looking at. And the other item was the off-ramp, trying to tee that up so that it's not a slip lane.
Right.
The DOT, we've requested that in the past, and the DOT has been against that. So, sometimes things get done, paints gets done, who knows, maybe it could get teed up inadvertently.
Harold?
Surprise.
Yeah. I move that we place this on file. I think the comments we made is taken seriously, and I'd like to move that we place this on file.
Second.
Any further discussion? And I guess I'll just comment that I understand the request and appreciate the request, but what we have is two conflicting things. One, it may seem safer for bikes with the car removed. However, the downside of that is that car actually provides some traffic calming incentive, so to speak, and it's a long-term parked car normally. So it's kind of a which one is better, and it sounds like there's not a consensus. So we're not doing this in this case, to retain a parking spot. We're doing it because we think it actually makes the road a little bit safer overall. Far from ideal, but that's kind of where we are, and hopefully we'll have a solution at some point, but I support putting it on file for now. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we leave that graphic, if I could just make one little tangential comment. Maplewood Avenue, as you're heading out of town towards the Dennett intersection, as a cyclist, that is a really challenging place to make a left turn as a cyclist from Maplewood onto Dennett. And I just want to point that out. When the Rockingham Overpass bike bridge was built, Dennett, Maplewood was the route to downtown. As we move forward and think about the Maplewood corridor, I'd like to be sure that we don't that we look at that from a bicyclist perspective. You got to be really intrepid to make that left
I
turn.
ride that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
understand
Like, I
what-
frequently pull
I
over to the
understand what
right.
you're saying. You got to
Yeah.
get into that travel lane. You got to be looking up and seeing cars coming at
So
you.
I'm
You
just
gotta
pointing
know
that out for
you know,
future. What we
Yep.
think about
No,
that.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Okay, yeah, so good suggestions there. And moving on in the agenda, Bartlett Street, proposed mini roundabout at intersection with Thornton Street by DPW and neighborhood residents. Sample motion is move to approve mini roundabout as part of the Bartlett Street reconstruction project.
So I'll move for discussion purposes.
I'll second for discussion.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may? Just to be really clear, city staff brought forward two options and did not make a recommendation. And when asked specifically relative to the roundabout, I said that the roundabout is a viable option, although it would probably become a political issue, and it would take, you may make the decision, but it would be talking about it for years. For those reasons, I said if you want to move forward, probably using the raised intersection with stop signs would be the best way to move forward. That was, a statement that was made. The group of people at the time were very supportive of moving forward the roundabout, saying, hey, this is an opportunity to really dissuade people from wanting to go down this roadway. And that was the major concern. It was like reduce the volume of traffic. We explained also that really in order to reduce the volume of traffic, there were two things that needed to be done. The roundabout, the state roundabout needed to be addressed, which is, my understanding is a top priority, or is a major priority.
For being added to the 10-year plan.
We're adding to the 10-year plan. And the Coakley Road intersection.
Traffic circle, you meant.
The traffic circle. And the Coakley Road signals need to be addressed because that's a major cause of backups on those two areas. Eliminating that backup would incentivize having people use that area and reduce the number of traffic folks going through there. So we explained that those things would happen. The consensus of the group was very clear that the roundabout was what they were pursuing. And this was a neighborhood group that had, as Ann had pointed out, that they had multiple meetings. They had, we had public meetings. We've had discussions on this. This is not something that staff just came up with and just pushed it through on their own without any dialogue. So it's really, it is something that it has been discussed. It has been vetted. And frankly, if it's supportive from the neighborhood's perspective, I'm comfortable with moving forward with it. But I would suggest we try it as a pilot first. It could be a little tricky to figure out how to pilot it, but I think some investment in cones and barrels and things like that. And then we have an opportunity to let it kick the tires, see how it works. And that would be my suggestion.
You're talking about a pilot program, probably.
Yeah, but we'd want to do it in a relatively short time frame because the goal is to be in construction this summer.
Can it be done?
Can it be done? Of course it can be done. I wouldn't have made that motion, Harold. It couldn't have been done.
Mark?
Thomas there.
No, I was just going to clarify. So, Peter, Harold, so you're
Mark.
No, the microphone.
kicking back. So you're going to do exactly what you did on by the bridge on Bar. That was a pilot.
I'm making a motion to do this.
Second.
Any discussion? Chief.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify some of the statements that were made earlier in the inquiries that we received electronically, this is the type of project, again, where we work with Public Works, and we actually get our vehicles down in there because we're talking, the problem we have is with our aerial ladders where we have two trucks in excess of 47 feet long. One has a significant hang off the back, one has a significant off the front, and the approaches to these can be a little tricky, but we do go down there and physically measure them and lay it out and make sure that the vehicles can get in and out, and again, take into account parking, snowbanks, so on and so forth.
Erica, then Steve.
Last time we talked, or one of the times we talked about mini roundabouts, I did some deep dives, and they do have some. I can't find the provider, I can't find the person to buy it from, but there are some kind of pseudo-temporary versions that can be installed.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
Okay, I think it would be hard to do a pilot of a roundabout with cones and
Yeah.
have, especially because you'd want a fire truck
you want
to be able to
have the fire
drive
trucks go
over
over
it.
it.
But I think that would be a great way to test it. And I agree. I mean, I think it's roundabouts work because they force people to slow down. And so it does, you can kind of optional a stop sign, but a roundabout forces you to slow down. So I think they're really great in terms of safety and traffic calming. Obviously, though, we don't want a political landmine. I think mini roundabouts would be fantastic in the city.
I will predict it will
be a political landmine.
Yeah.
So I definitely have some vested interest in trying to make it not be a political landmine, because I'd like to see these regularly used. I think it would be great. So I don't want us to get burned out the gate because there's too much controversy around it. But I think a pilot with some sort of temporary
some mats
thing
of some sort that you could put down and adhere to the roadway
would be great.
Steve?
I value your kind of conservative approach to this, Peter. I have some real worries about whether this is the best spot for it, but more importantly, a landmine being thrown where we're having this kind of broader, holistic discussion about the whole corridor. And I wouldn't like to see something transpire here that sours the larger discussion about the Bartlett Street corridor improvements. So to me, that's much more important than this immediate spot at this time. So a demonstration is great. I would just add to the fire chief, to the demonstration with the vehicles, please remember that we have Coast and Wildcat Transit using that. I don't think there'll be a problem, but when you do have a physical test, if you could remember to invite both transit providers to bring their largest vehicle as well.
That's a great point.
Mary Lou?
Yes, my concern is for pedestrian crosswalks. So I really want to make sure that is optimized for safety.
And Mark?
I just had a comment on, there's 4 addresses that are about those properties, 337, 340, 358. I didn't hear those numbers today, and those are Thornton Street, 346 Bartlett. Those have immediate impact. The properties have an immediate impact on this project. They abut it. So I'd like to hear from 1, 2, 3, 4 of those households.
We did have commenters from 340 Thornton, and we've had correspondence from 333 Thornton.
Yeah,
so we've heard from
two folks weighed in.
Yeah, 337, 340, 358, 346 we didn't hear from. And those are actual right on that corner. So it'd be really advantageous to hear from them, either for or against, or at least get their thoughts, feelings, and ideas and concerns.
Yeah, and I understand.
And I think that's going to happen.
We're going to hear from
Counselor,
them
I think we're going to hear from that based on the pilot program, and that's what this pilot program is going to do. It's going to give people more input.
Is push back a little bit, because what we're hearing consistently from the neighborhood is there's too much traffic, people are going too fast, and it's dangerous.
Right.
What it's unfair of us to ask from residents is for them to become traffic engineers and then provide us with a solution. So what we're proposing here, and we heard from several residents today that the current solution is not working. It was even worse before, when there were no stop signs, was my understanding.
Right.
So we're going to try something here with a pilot,
right,
and we're going to hope that it's better.
Right.
But if it's not, it's not permanent, it's a pilot. But I think the consensus is that the current solution does not work.
Oh, absolutely.
People are still using this roadway instead of the alternative option that we've created that we were hoping they would use.
Yeah.
So by putting in a roundabout, one of the complaints that we heard is there's going to be delays, and it's going to cause traffic to move a little slower. What that will in effect cause to happen is people will now take the alternative route because it's quicker and easier, and they can avoid the roundabout. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I think it's going to be a political landmine. I think people are going to be very upset about it, but I think doing a pilot the way that Erica suggested, where it's not just some cones and barrels, but it's a pretty robust pilot, I think is what you were saying, where it's...
Yes.
I think is a good
I'm 100% in agreement with the pilot, no question about it. I was very specific with my comments on 4 addresses. Okay, for those particular residents that live there every day, How do they think, feel, concern? And we'll get that. We'll get that from Peter eventually through a pilot program. And that's why I'm excited about a pilot program versus not having one. And then the chief's going to have his concerns. It's all going to work its way out. But it's those 4 addresses I didn't hear today. I didn't hear from any of those addresses.
So one of them you did.
And they
so
will.
actually, 2 of them you did. 340 you did, and the other gentleman across the street you heard from. So we heard from 2 of the 4.
Okay.
Today. So that,
340,
but your point is well
337.
taken. I mean, we'll get
Okay.
feedback.
It's just the point.
My apologies. I have to leave.
And I think once it goes to pilot where there's going to be more public input, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I just put more specific on those addresses because they do directly abut those, so.
Yeah, I think your point's well taken, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge that
Yeah, we're gonna
people
move
are
forward.
not happy with the intersection.
No.
So we have to find a new
That's
solution.
given.
And I don't think, to statement said earlier, we are not going to find any solution that has 100% agreement. So
no,
Mr. Chair, there's
we have to try
there's a
something.
motion on the table.
Yeah. We
to-
could do
to-
a roll call vote on this?
Sure.
Sure, we're all in agreement.
Can we restate the motion? I felt like there were 2 motions, so I'm a little confused.
Pilot program.
The motion was to move forward with the design as is, with the one component being the Thornton-Bartlett intersection, doing a pilot on that for additional review prior to final decision on that one section. The balance of the work was not contested. We're going to do the balance of the design, and that one little area we're going to evaluate a little bit, and we're going to try to do it in a robust manner. So that's the motion.
And Mr.
How long will that pilot program be?
Enough to get some data, so what, a month maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll know pretty quick.
Yeah.
Seconded?
Mr. Chairman?
It was already seconded, yep.
Eric, yes.
One of the people who lives at the corner is raising their hand.
That's Teresa.
Yes, I will motion to, or will somebody motion to suspend the rules?
Move to suspend the
Motion to
rules.
suspend.
Second.
But you have a motion on the floor, is it?
Oh,
Therein lies the problem, right?
yeah, therein lies the problem.
I'd be happy to allow a comment for a friendly amendment.
So a friendly amendment
Friendly
to
amendment
suspend
to
the
allow,
rules?
to suspend the rules to allow Teresa to speak.
Because
All right, all those in, or do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Go ahead, Teresa.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I actually had a question. The pilot of the roundabout, would that also include extending the sidewalks and the bump outs in that area at the same time?
It would try to be configured to reflect how it would be at the end. Obviously, the sidewalks would not be pushed out, because I know that was your concern before. But the road width would be configured in such a way to reflect that.
Okay. And then the question is, if this is successful, is it because we are narrowing the roads or because of the roundabout? That's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes, thank you.
We'll have to evaluate the data.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just make one comment before we take the vote. What I'm hearing is that we want to not necessarily take the cheapest way to do this pilot, but to do the best way to do this pilot. That makes
Yes,
sense.
it'll likely require some investment of time and money in order to do this.
Okay.
So we will make sure we do the best we can.
So I guess we could do just all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks. Moving on.
Short meeting.
D, Dennett Street, request for traffic calming by resident, sample motion to move, to place item on file.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And I think Eric has a presentation, or?
We do
some
have
comments?
we did a couple of locations out there, spot speed studies with the stealth recorder, and the results are in the packet. It shows that the average speeds are 24, and I believe it was 26 miles an hour on that section, with 85th percentiles, 29 and 31. So One of the issues we have here is with a speed limit of 20 miles an hour. When you look at that speed limit, yes, there is a speeding issue, but that speed limit of 20, again, is not per state law. So when you look at 25 miles an hour as being the minimum state law, then the speeds are in that range. The average speeds are right in line with the legal speed limit. But they are slightly above the average speed at 29, 30 miles an hour. So I think the commenters do raise a good issue with the sight lines on that hill, and that's something we can look at, and maybe we could take some measures there. But the speeding per se doesn't stand out as being an issue, but I think in combination with the sight lines, it's something to review.
I'd modify my motion to place on file with continued evaluation on improvements to that sight line.
Second.
Mark, I think you had something?
No, I just seconded his motion.
Oh, okay.
That's what I had to say.
I recognize the state speed limit is 25, but I do feel like what we're seeing is quite a bit of travel notably higher than that 25, and I think for an area where people want to be walking with their families, that's, 100 vehicles a day are driving 30 miles an hour or higher. That's pretty fast for what we would aspire for a walkable residential environment. Using the 25 mile an hour threshold, we're not meeting our kind of traffic calming warrants, but I would think that there's a big difference between 25 and 30 in terms of both perceived and actual safety for a pedestrian environment, and so I think there's room for us to do what we can. Maybe not to, we may not get it down to 20, but I think there's room for us to do some things to try and slow people down a bit on this section of road.
Any other comments or discussion? So I will make a couple of comments. I did receive quite a few emails, although not until last night. This was a bit unique in that we didn't have a December meeting. The request came in November. We got the results at the end of November, and now we're kind of presenting the results with a motion before we really had a chance to hear from the residents. So I think that was a mistake on my part to kind of, instead of following our normal process, we kind of sped things up inadvertently. When we're efficient, it looks like we get in trouble as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw my motion and just to have a further discussion and have our staff report back with further detail allowing.
And I think maybe if you might consider, Peter, adjusting it, and if the committee would agree, because it was requested by several residents, and to Erica's point, it is a interesting configuration, perhaps a site walk. So we could just look at that section of roadway and see if it would be feasible to consider any other types of traffic calming?
We'd be happy to do that.
So I guess...
So your motion's to...
I'm withdrawing my motion. And I'm saying that, have staff report back, move to have staff report back at the next meeting for further discussion.
Second.
And include a site walk.
Okay, we'll schedule that.
Yep.
After the meeting.
If we're going to have a night meeting in February, does that change? I think we
shouldn't change. You do a site walk during the day.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
And we can do a report back if it slips to March. That's fine as well, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nothing's going to get done in the next couple months. So.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Now we're cruising. Old business. Maplewood Avenue pedestrian signal phasing at Congress, Hanover, and Deer Street. Status update. Sample motion. Move to request a report back at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Yes, second.
I'll second that.
Let's move it along.
All right. And I think this will be extra beneficial if we are having a night meeting, because this continues to be a topic of discussion in the community. Right. There are very good reasons for the changes that we made. However, those reasons are difficult, perhaps for people to understand at their face, even though it does increase the safety according to most of the studies.
What I'm doing?
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then from the Deputy Police Chief, the monthly accident report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you can see in November, we had 69 total crashes. 40 of those were reportable. And if you can see down the bottom there where we have pedestrian and bicycles, you can see for bicycles we had one collision between a vehicle and a bicycle in October, 2 collisions between pedestrians and motor vehicles in October, and another one in November, which is somewhat unusual, but it's worth noting that each time I look at these stats each month, I look at the contributing factors, particularly with bicyclists and pedestrians, as to why the accidents occurred, to see if it's something that is an issue that might be brought to this committee. So just as background, I always do look at the contributing factors as to why. In these instances of crashes versus pedestrians and bicyclists, injuries were relatively minor, and in most, if not all cases, either the pedestrian or bicyclist was at fault for the accident, which we do find quite frequently, and one of them occurred in a parking lot as well, which is where we have a lot of our crashes. So there's not a lot you can do with a pedestrian accident in a privately controlled parking lot. However, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to talk a little bit about, we didn't have a meeting last month, but we were really putting an emphasis on DWI and impaired driving. Over the last couple of months, October, November, December, we have seen a marked increase in DWI arrest, impaired driving crashes, and all things relative. We conducted saturation patrols along with New Hampshire State Police. We've had a couple of fatal accidents. And as part of this committee, reducing crashes and looking at safety measures as it relates to vehicles and traffic and safety is something that we're always taking a close look at. And what we're seeing right now is one of the leading causes of our crashes and our crashes where people are injured is not speed, it's not distracted driving, right? It's impairment. And most of that impairment is alcohol, not drugs. The level of impairment that we're seeing is our average DWI, for those that agreed to take either a blood or breath test, is a .14. So 0.08 is the legal limit. 0.16 is an aggravated DWI, which is twice the legal limit. The average DWI that we're making that agrees to test is a 1.4. So your average DWI that's out there right now is almost twice the legal limit. It's not an 09. It's not somebody who's borderline. And that's why, whether it's the police department or the fire department driving around town, we'll come across cars in the telephone poles and cars in the trees because they're just that impaired. So anytime we have an opportunity to bring that to people's attention, to spread the word, to drink responsibly and find a responsible driver, that's part of our goal as well. So I know the holidays are over and we put that big pitch on, but just because the holidays are over doesn't mean impaired driving is as well. So.
Mark?
I was just curious, Chief. Is that more days, nights, weekends?
It's more at nights, but you would be probably pretty shocked to see the people that are twice the legal limit at 8:30 in the morning as well. But most of the crashes are evenings and or late at night. But we will get severely impaired people at 9 o'clock in the morning.
So was that a 60-day increase of effort by the state and municipality?
No, we didn't have it. Okay. It wasn't a time limit on it. You're probably aware of the fatal crash that occurred at the traffic circle on Thanksgiving, which is likely contributing factor of alcohol there. So, and that in response with a number of other serious alcohol-related crashes in Portsmouth and in the Seacoast in general, we partnered with New Hampshire State Police using grant-funded money to conduct that saturation patrol on that one night, just to kind of set the tone for the holiday.
So based on the past years, has there been a spike this year?
Oh, certainly. Within the last October, November, December, we've compared
to previous years.
Yeah.
What's the contribution to that, in your professional opinion?
I think it's a long answer. I think drinking habits for 2.5, almost 3 years of COVID have changed, and I think we're still feeling the effects of that.
Yeah.
In the long-term effects of people's behavior. We all know that alcohol consumption went up during 2.5 almost 3 years of COVID, and I think we're still seeing the results of that.
Are you seeing a pattern? Can I ask these questions?
Well,
Or am I dragging it out?
Yeah, we're
Everyone-
kind of already running over. What I
This is
would,
just a-
let me.
I could do this over a coffee.
Yeah, Mark, let me just,
I'm just curious.
throw this out here.
Right. Sorry,
I have read that Maine is significantly up, New Hampshire's up, Massachusetts is up, seems the whole country's up with fatal crashes. And a lot of it is being attributed to driving habits changed during COVID, but now there's a lot more cars on the road and people are still driving fast and they're still driving impaired. So I don't know, and the city manager's not here at the moment, but perhaps this committee could suggest that we have a marketing campaign around the city with signs about impairment or to get an Uber or a taxi or something like that.
So, Mr. Chair, I would say that the funds are not, we haven't allocated funds for that type of activity. And, you know, we run into situations where committees often make commitments and without having the funding appropriated. So I would, you know, not this year, but if as part of the budget process, if this money gets set aside for committees, this is an opportunity as an example of one of those things.
Okay.
But I'm just cautious because we've received a lot of requests from committees this last year that required expenditures, and I'm sensitive to that.
All right. Okay, and given the time, I'll move on to miscellaneous, but if it's not urgent, maybe next meeting might be a better place for it.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We gotta think-